UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Good evening and welcome to Behind the Headlines. My name is Timothy Nyangweso. Tonight we focus on religious leaders. Religion has played a very pivotal part in how governance of this country has been. From the 1800s, when religion came into this country, or way back when we had our own African religions and norms and beliefs there, played a big part on how the culture and the norms happened in then. But when Christianity or other religions came into this country, as far as 1970s, when we became an Islamic country, but also as far back as the 80s, when religion played a very, very big pivotal part on how we became different parties. Parties like the Democratic Party, the Uganda People's Congress, all became partisan to what religion looked like. Domination that became either Anglican or Catholic. The most recent being the Kisoro by-election, where religion took center stage on who would become the next member of parliament, the next woman member of parliament then. But now we also look at it as we draw closer to 2026. The upcoming MPs or people that are vying for different political posts will be going to these religious institutions and vying for these posts. The biggest undoing is that there's a congregation there that is going through a mammoth of pain that is not being addressed by its leaders. Today, we discuss with religious leaders and put them to task to answer the question, why are they shying away from discussing the pains of Ugandans, but most of all the things that have happened in by-elections, the poverty, and they're still ignoring it. What is their role, especially with the congregations that they superintend over, and what do they tell them on a daily, especially as we look at Easter coming in hindsight this weekend. Let me introduce the panel. On my immediate left, Dr. Christine Mpyangu, who is a senior lecturer of religion and peace studies at Makerere University. She's with us here. She's also the vice chairperson of the lecturers body at Makerere University. Good evening, Dr. Christine, and it's good to have you.
Thank you, Timothy. Good evening, and good evening, viewers.
Hosting her for the first time, and I hope we'll have a lovely show. Next to Dr. Christine is Reverend Simon Masiga, who is a lecturer also of religion and peace studies at Makerere University. Good evening, Reverend, and it's good to have you.
Thank you, Timothy. It's good to be here. I'm always a viewer of the program, and I'm glad that today I'll be on the panel with you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next to Reverend Simon is Pastor Joshua Mugabi, who is the lead pastor of the Family and Counseling Department at Watoto Church. Good evening, Pastor Joshua, and it's good to have you.
Good evening. I hope we're allowed to call you Timo.
It's okay.
Yeah.
It's very okay.
Yes.
Next to Reverend Joshua Mugabi is Reverend Canon Gideon Byamgisha, who is the founder of African Network of Religious Leaders in Uganda. Good evening, Reverend, and it's good to have you.
Thank you very much. It is the African Network of Religious Leaders living with or impacted by HIV.
Oh, okay.
In Nerera.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lastly but not least, Reverend Canon Aaron Mwesije, the Director of Ethics in charge of Religious Affairs at the Ministry of Ethics and Integrity. Good evening, Reverend, and it's good to have you.
Good evening, Timothy. And Reverend Gideon is not Reverend Canon alone, he's actually Reverend Doctor. Reverend Canon Dr. Gideon Byamgisha.
Thank you very much.
This man has a PhD, and not one, but many, so can even be double doctor or triple. So you need to know the titles of these big people if you are not.
I was reading somewhere where the Archbishop was saying something, but we'll get to that in a little bit. You can be part of the show. Go to our YouTube channel, drop your comment there, let us know what you think about the conversation with our religious leaders that are in the studio here to be able to discuss patent issues that are pain points for you and I, especially unemployment for young people, poverty that is really looming, but also the electoral violence and the tensions around elections each passing year. 2021 was terrible. 2026, do we hope for better? These religious leaders will be telling us. The number to text us or WhatsApp us is 0709 60 25 92 for both text and WhatsApp. We're also streaming live on X. You can get there and drop your comment. I'll get to those in a short while. Just to give you a brief, the country has national values that I have been able to read, and they tend to be exact. There is respect for humanity, honesty, justice and fairness, hard work, integrity, creativity and innovation, social responsibility, social harmony, national unity, national consciousness, and we'll be focusing on some that are really cutting across in different areas. Things like integrity for corruption. We'll also be looking at honesty, but also responsibility and national unity in those areas. So the pain points are where we get to. Let me come to Reverend Mwesije, since you host or hold the docket of Director of Ethics. When you look at the relationship between religious institutions and government, how would you evaluate it? What would be your evaluation of it?
Thank you so much, Timothy, and listeners. How do I evaluate the religious fraternity in Uganda with government? Having worked for the church or religious institution for about 15 years, and also having worked for government now for about 12 years, I think I have a story to tell in as far as government and church are concerned. Uganda is not a state religion, first of all, but it allows freedom of worship, which is Article 29, 1C. But unfortunately, when the 1995 Constitution formulated that article in that Constitution of allowing freedom of worship and freedom of expression, the people who actually did that work did not put into consideration how this freedom should be exercised. And hence, partly, the freedom has been abused by some individuals in the religious fraternity. Yes, freedom of worship. Uganda, not a state religion. It allows everyone to worship in the way he or wants. But because that article, there was they didn't put a mechanism in place how this freedom should be exercised. Because they, as religious leaders, can exercise it in any way they want. Yet the Constitution is not a religious thing. It is actually a mega plan of action, because a Constitution can even be a policy, but at the same time it can be a law, whatever you want to call it, but it is a plan of government that is put in place to solve a certain problem. Without a constitution, then the nation would not be guided socially, economically, politically, name it. But so it's the political or the people in the government that put their heads together, brought on board all the different stakeholders, society inclusive, religious leaders inclusive, but of course coordinated by government. So they didn't put in place that. So the relationship is good. It's not tense between government and the religious institutions in Uganda. That freedom they still exercise. But there is a problem because of that kind of misuse and abuse by some circles, not all of them, of course. When I became the director for religious affairs, actually pioneering that office, because originally during the time of Idi Amin, there was a fully fledged Ministry of Religious Affairs in the office of the president. But of course there was no policy. Idi Amin used to use decrees, and he had to put that office in place and of course put their policy without doing any consultation, and put in place the do's and don'ts before the religious leaders. But when I became the director with my colleagues, of course the Directorate for Ethics and Integrity, with a mandate given by the president of enhancing collaboration and partnership between the religious institutions and government, and promoting their full participation in the fight against corruption, and also defeating other offshoots of moral decadence. What we did, we say, how do we coordinate this huge constituency that is made up of fragmented religious differences? Because Uganda is, like Professor Mbiti said, that Africans are notoriously religious, and I would borrow the same word of Professor Mbiti. Uganda is notoriously religious. We are trying to complete a database for how many faith or religious groups we have. Actually, how many Christians, how many Muslims, how many Seventh Adventists, how many Pentecostals in the whole country. We are developing a database, and as you know, a database is not a one-off job, it's a continuous thing. But if you look at what we have so far done as the Directorate for Ethics and Integrity, and even the consultation we did, because we thought it wise that we should come up with a policy, not a law, but a policy which sets guidelines so that before you begin a church or a mosque, there must be ABC on ground to show that really you are qualified to start a church or to start a mosque, but not waking up one day and you dream with your wife at night, and in the morning you start a church or a mosque, either in cinema where residentials are or where. So anywhere, because that's how it has been. Why? Freedom of worship, Article 29.
But doesn't that contravene that same article if you're going to regulate religious institutions with giving them guidelines on what to do? You're also giving us a good side of, giving us the side of the religious institutions. Give us the side of government.
The policy is not a law. There is a difference between an act of parliament or law and a policy. The policy sets guidelines. Even them, they can develop a policy how they can operate, like at interreligious council level, an umbrella organization that brings them together. Even the Anglican Church or the Pentecostal Church can have a policy of how it runs their affairs. So this is one way of, the policy was meant that there were key 4 objectives. 1, enhance collaboration and partnership between the religious institutions and government. That's important, so that they are involved in national development. 2, promote unity in diversity, because there is intra and inter-conflict as far as religious organizations are concerned, to an extent that when these conflicts become reach a higher level, government will be blamed. Like the Chiwetere case, you know very much that at one time in 2000, people are murdered in Inferno. And up to now, government has never come up with a report to show how many people died, and even to show where Chiwetere himself is. You see why? Because there was no policy. Number 3, so promoting unity in diversity to avoid the intra. If you go to Chuburi, the Muslims, and Old Kampala, they are not at par. They are at cross purposes. These are people who believe in one God, Allah, but they are at cross purposes. They are actually fierce rivals. I visited the two, and yet these are all Muslims. So that conflict can actually. So another thing was actually to promote transparency and accountability within the religious institutions. Because as much as there is transparency and accountability, the government doesn't know. And for your own information, they serve the same people. Government serves the same people that churches serve.
Okay.
The 4th one, I'm giving you the objectives of the policy because you were saying there was going to be a contradiction. The 4th one is actually to streamline, and very important, registration of churches and mosques. For your own information, Timothy, and these leaders are here, they are religious leaders. There is no church in Uganda that is registered since time memorial. The Pentecostals, where Pastor Mugabe comes from, register under NGO board, and that is under Ministry of Internal Affairs as NGOs, and the church is not an NGO. The Muslims register under companies limited by guarantee under Ministry of Constitutional Affairs as if they are companies, yet it is a faith. The Anglicans, the main traditional, and the Catholics, they register under Trustees Incorporation Act, which is under Ministry of Lands. Imagine a church registering under land. Up to now, that's a colonial arrangement that was there because colonialists were interested in land, occupying space. From Napoleon's objectives, the objective of war is victory. The objective of victory is occupation.
Okay.
That is why you find Lubaga for the Catholics, Nyamrembe for the Anglicans. So the space was more important. So the church as an institution whose mission is to bring people to God, closer to God, has never been registered in this country between me and you.
Thank you.
So, and it is not the problem, it's not their fault. It is the fault of government because the government is supposed to give them a direct. So we thought it wise that we streamline, that's the right word, streamline, so that you have a desk. And recently, you following, the president was in Ginger. He actually said, I don't allow churches to register under NGOs. They should register as churches, not NGOs.
Thank you. Let me bring in Reverend Dr. Byamgisha. Reverend, when you hear his submission, first of all, he flaunts the churches, then he flaunts the government. What do you make of the current relationship between church and religious institutions? Because it seems like churches are registered somewhere else, Muslims are registered somewhere else, the others, we haven't even heard about the Orthodox and Seventh-day Adventists. What do you make of the relationship of government and
companies
religious
limited by guarantee?
Yeah, if there is no consensus from where we're operating from, there is likely to be that tension. So maybe we are riding the bicycle in the horns because we should start with by saying government and religion. Where do we cooperate and why? And then that becomes a basis for, so what is needed from government, what is needed from churches, so that, because each needs the other. In my own capacity, in my own thinking, a country or a nation cannot be greater than its spirituality.
Exactly.
So one is the heartbeat of the other, and they need to cooperate. But the basis of cooperation has to be discussed, agreed, so that we even know, we have the principles, we know what you are contributing to, we even know how to do self-audits, so that we know when we are contributing to what you are asking about issues of unity, issues of prosperity, holistic prosperity, are you in line? And when one is not in line, then we can question. But now we have no basis of critiquing each other.
And it's very interesting that you say no basis, but let's get back to both the things you've said, prosperity. Government has programs it's running.
Yes.
Churches has a prosperity gospel.
Yes.
At what point is the intersection of these two?
That's a good point.
Because you're dealing with the same congregation. There's PDM, there's a church preaching about prosperity. You said one should be the heartbeat of the other.
Yes.
Where's the intersection?
The intersection is that there is where they meet, but there is where they separate. I am a theologian on public theology, and we run what we call holistic salvation. That there are, when faith exists to bring holistic well-being, and that has three parts. One, people have to survive. You have to be born, you have to live. That is survival. Part of salvation of why Jesus came into the world. Number two, you not only have to survive, you have to thrive. Not just surviving, but thriving. Number three, you must thrive and survive in a way that qualifies you to enter into eternal fellowship with God. Now, the church is there to critique whether the methods government is using to bring survival and and thriving are in line with what God needs. Because you can say, oh, okay, people are thriving, but are they thriving through spiritual ways? Or are you using corruption and using illicit wealth? You know, so each is there to contribute. But sometimes, for example, when the faith communities emphasizes prosperity gospel at the expense of the other two, then government has to critique, to come in. And that's why I'm saying they support each other. Like the prosperity programs for the government, they depend a lot on whether people are relating well. If there is conflict, you talk about, there is no program that can succeed. So faith communities are there to preach the 12 principles of any development program. Number one, there must be love and grace. There must be compassion and solidarity. There must be equity and justice. There must be forgiveness and reconciliation. There must be unity in diversity and harmonious relating and trading. Now, those values, when the church does them very well, then the programs of the government, whether it is health, whether it is development, whether it is, they have a solid ground, a fertile ground to flourish. You don't have them, you struggle.
Reverend, before I get to Pastor Joshua, sticking with you, it sounds like a very good message for a Sunday service. The person who was beaten in Kawempe, you're talking about surviving and thriving.
Yes.
Both government and the religious institutions are looking at people who are looking for a meal to survive. You're talking about equity and justice.
Yes.
How should a person who was battered or has no voice be able to listen to you and say, fine, I have confidence in what he's saying?
Yeah, because that's my role. As my role is three. Priestly role to make sure.
Faith without actions is dead.
No.
Where is the action in
I
that
am
faith?
doing three roles. Number one, the priestly role, where people come and I lead them in worship, in knowing God and knowing how to live. Number two, the pastoral role. That person who has been mismanaged, abused, I am there as a priest to comfort the agitated, to comfort the challenged. But number three is prophetic role. My prophetic office will critique government, will say, you are not supposed to. That's not how a government that was called for God and my country should run.
Okay.
So the person in Kawempe who is feeling bad because of he's not seeing equity, he's not seeing justice, I am still there to, first of all, to give them even the language to describe what they are facing. Some people don't know. They may be, there could be someone saying, "Oh, you are being punished for your sins." So I need to bring in the right faith, because faith, Jesus says, your faith has made you well. Meaning there is a faith that can kill, there is a faith that can heal. And my role as a good religious leader, a theologian, is to make sure that whether it is government, whether it is wananchi, they are all contributing to the 12 principles I have alluded to.
Okay. Pastor Josh, let me come to you. Listening to Reverend Dr. Byamgisha, and you being a pastor, you have a congregation that you meet on Sunday or through the week. Why do religious leaders play ostrich when it comes to the pains of Ugandans?
Well, I don't think religious leaders are playing ostrich. It's the rest of the world is not listening to the church when they are speaking the truth. There's some degree of desire for convenience. I wanted to begin by saying, blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. And that needs to be universal. So it's not just any God, but needs to be the God who in the beginning created the heavens and the earth and gave man and woman a responsibility, created them equal before God and different responsibilities. And as we teach, and I believe the theologians will know this better, there has to be a clear demarcation between government and church. Their roles are distinct, although they're interlinked. I believe that when you know this God, you live out that transformational mindset in the roles he has given you. And the role of government is not to try to be the church, but to hold the sword. I think if I'm to use the words of Paul to the Romans, hold the sword to punish the wrongdoers and bless the people who do what is right. To protect the people. So there are key aspects that the church cannot do, because sometimes the church tries to arrest people and the rest. Yes, when we know what is standard, when you know what is the rule, or like somebody said, you cannot know that a line is curved until you have a ruler. So as a church, our role is to help people know and understand this is a straight line, and we live our lives in accordance to the straight line. So, are we keeping quiet? No. We tell people every day, life is sacred. So live your life to protect life. All right? Authority comes from God, not from the vote. The vote is a process of giving you authority. And as a leader, you're accountable to God. Whether you will play around with the judicial system and win, ultimately you'll stand before God and you will find justice. So we tell the poor person who is oppressed, yes, there is hope. All right? And you can change the condition of your life through, like you said, responsible living. So those are key things that we need to bring people to. Our hope is not what government is doing. Our hope is how we are responding to the teaching and instruction of God's word. And once I'm chained, I know how to steward the resources God has given me. Once I'm chained, I know how to relate with my brother and sister. Once I'm chained, I know the aspirations to pursue because of the inner nature. So naturally, we are like weeds. Our default position is not love, like he's talking about. Our default position is not peace, but lying, cheating, drunkenness, witchcraft. And I know you began by saying, yeah, and African traditional things. They were things that were not right, although they were African, and people aspiring for African problems to be solved the African way, or African solutions. No, I think God, the creator of man, has the answer. So when we learn to walk in obedience to him, we will be a better people.
Pastor Josh, and I'm grateful at the level the conversation is going, but let's bring it down to the Ugandan. These corrupt leaders are sitting in the pews of your churches.
Yeah.
These corrupt leaders are putting iron sheets there.
Yeah.
You as the pastors are receiving cars from government.
Yeah.
Aren't you compromised?
Those who compromised were compromised long before they got into those offices. And when you talk about one of the gentlemen I remember, I think was an RDC, either in Kasese, I don't have the full details. He had also unfortunately or fortunately stolen iron sheets while he was in office. when he came to the saving knowledge of Jesus Christ, he recognized that it's wrong to steal. And part of the repentance message which he received was to take back what he had stolen. And he humbly received the sentence, I think, to go to prison for time. He said, I accept responsibility for my wrong deeds. It's not that I was trying to save the community. I'm not trying to build things. No. He recognized that he was a thief, not because of opportunity he got. He was a thief because he was an unchained sinner. And that's the message we preach. We cannot force you to change, but you need to know, all right, that when iron sheets just come into your compound, you don't simply accept them. It's wrong. Whether your neighbor has done this and wrong, you need to know. And it must come from conviction of the heart. So right now there's this discussion, the extra million shillings that is going to be given or has been given, whatever it is. If you've not worked for that money, you are like somebody who is scratching for a bet game. You don't grow your riches by betting. So, from your heart, you say, this is wrong, I will not receive this money. Even bribes, you don't receive those bribes. You don't take medicine from a hospital because from your heart you know you value life, you are accountable to God. Whether you'll be caught or not, you do what is right. So the poor man in the sewers and the rest, again, needs to ask himself, am I living the way God wants me to live, or am I ready to blame somebody? And I know it's a sin nature. Adam blamed Eve, and even somebody who has refused to shower blames the government for him having itches on his body. No. Yeah.
I think that person is going to blame.
Very important. You asked a good question. If these people who are pastors are given vehicles, don't you think, I think the vehicles, the way I know it because I worked for church and I was a PS for the church. It is the churches, the church leadership, when they have a function like consecration of a bishop, let me give an example, or a mufti, or what we call it for the Muslims,
A mufti.
a mufti or chief card, something like that. They are the ones who write to the president requesting for the vehicle. I wrote a letter myself. When a bishop is going to, even now, because their president was giving vehicles to the Anglican bishops, now the Pentecostals have an arms. They are saying now we also need to have the vehicles. I am aware. I'm the director for religious affairs. Now, so it would be they would be compromised if it was done through political patronage. But this is not political patronage. In other words, it is not the president who is trying to win the religious leaders to give him votes by giving them vehicles. It is them who want them, because they are saying, we want to share on the national cake. We are serving the same people. Our roads are poor where we serve. We need vehicles, some of them actually which have to be four-wheel drive, and we don't have the money to buy such a vehicles so that we provide services to our communities. It is on that basis.
Reverend Messenger, does it make it right?
Yes.
No, it doesn't.
Why? I mean, if I get the vehicle and I do the right thing, if I don't, first of all, as a bishop, I need to move to do pastoral work. He said it. Priestly, pastoral, and prophetic. You cannot execute that, your mandate as a bishop or a priest or even a pastor. Like, you see, the issue is like some of the pastors here in Kampala are just here. Maybe but also they need to drive. But there are those who up country, in Sebei, in Karamoja, and the roads are impassable. And they don't have the money to buy these vehicles. They need four-wheel drive. So the president getting from the national cake money and buying a vehicle to a bishop does not mean that he's trying to to corrupt him so that he can be able to vote for him. No. In fact, many people between me and you, those who are in opposition now, don't think that they never got vehicles. They did. So it's, first of all, you are the one who has written. I'm telling you, I have evidence. That one is not saying that it's not from hearsay. People write requesting the president to support them, to give them the vehicles. And it is not because...
it make it right?
Yes. I mean, if they are doing...
What is the justification of you getting a
if the
national
president
cake for
gives me money, sir, I am building a church, okay, to serve the people. And the president gives me 10 billion or 1 billion, or I'm just giving a random figure to support that God's work. What crime is there? First of all, the man has come in broad daylight. He has given it, and it is from the treasury. He has either from classified or unclassified, because the president is a fountain of honor. You cannot disagree with what he's giving. So what is wrong with that?
So one of your principles or values that you have here is hard work,
Yes.
is integrity,
Yes,
social responsibility.
yes.
How social is that responsible of you getting a car that is only beneficial to you and not to the church?
Yeah, but you see, when you get the car as a bishop or as a priest, you are serving other people. And the money that you can collect or mobilize from your Christians after going can buy now another vehicle for the Mothers Union or other activities of which they are doing. So I think, to me, you should not confuse giving those vehicles. Maybe the way, if they receive it on the basis of patronage, what I may call political patronage, okay, favors and what have you. But if it is not on that basis, and I am getting money from government, because first of all, as I told you, the churches serve the same people that the government serve. If the minister gets a vehicle and an MP from government coffers, from the national cake money, why not the bishop? Bishop is serving the same people, the minister is serving the MP. So unless you are saying that all people should work hard to buy their own vehicles, including ministers, and so we stop, so that the money that is used to buy vehicles for ministers, cabinet ministers, for parliamentarians should be stopped, and also the bishops should not be given those vehicles. But if an MP is getting that and is serving, and some of them are even corrupt, and this is not a corrupt person, he's a man of God, he does God's work, he's serving the same community, so he's going to do pastoral work, to move miles and miles, sometimes he sleeps there. Now, and the Christians, if they had money really to buy that vehicle, they would actually do it. For your own information, there are those dioceses which have the capacity to do it, but there are those who don't have. So what is the problem in that?
We'll come back to that conversation. Let me bring in Reverend Simon here. Reverend, what pains do you feel Ugandans are undergoing as a religious leader? What are those that you can touch and feel and say, these are the pains I feel Ugandans going through?
Thank you, Timothy. I've been listening to the conversation carrying through. It may look like an illusion to begin thinking I can feel the pain of everyone, but I have been in scenarios where people have treated others as less human, in the sense that we tend to use probably our levels of authority. I think my elder community talked about people who misuse the prosperity gospel, where a leader of a congregation is much better living in a life that's of more comfort than the followers in terms of social transformation, economic development, and capacity to sustain themselves. So I feel the pain of exploitation. That's one angle. The other angle is the pain of not being heard. You know, when you think about church, I and Christine look at church both from the angle of scientific angle of studying it and the angle of religiosity. Now, the church has aspect of being an organism, or in terms of nature, an organization in terms of constitutions, and an ordinance in terms of the activity it carries out. Now, at that level of transition in between, how does the nature of church come in practice of how people should live? So that's where oftentimes the manipulation comes in, that I feel the pain that keeps going around among the followers, especially when people's livelihood is ignored, compromised, or in the name of taking care of another one leader of a religious movement. That, in my eyes, I see something like that.
And I'm glad both of you and Dr. Christine, who I'll come to, you're both from Makerere. You have about 16,000 students that graduated this year with only 9,000 jobs. There's also a residue of last year that didn't have jobs. The unemployment of youth, with about 75% of young people between 18 and 25 unemployed. Poverty in this country, corruption in this country. Are these pains you feel in this country? But also, the one that I want to put to you that I had Pastor Josh talk about, he talked about the heart. Who is to blame for the moral decadence in this country? One of the things that has been written in the newspaper this week is the high drug abuse versus a degree in Makerere.
Wow, who is to blame? I don't know if I would say blame me. I know it's all of it. It would be very interesting. But I'll draw 3 lines. In most cases, what I think I appreciate, for example, what is going on in national curriculum reviews and development, is to improve creativity. Because in Uganda, I think my elder can help me with some statistics. The government is the biggest employer. Then, yes, then other people go either in self-employment, agriculture, industry,
private sector.
So I practically feel the pain. I've been in instances where someone will see your position and think you have a place where to employ them, and it may not be there. But there is a notion of education I personally try to pass on to students that graduate, that education empowers you with skills to create change, to be a person who is going to discover what is it that I'm able to do is my life. And that's where it comes to the aspect he spoke about, the heart. So if there is moral decadence, there are 2 things. One, many students struggle with many things like personal wellness, mental health. Others struggle with just taking care of food. They even just to have a meal, they hear a rumor about a meal. Now, when people are doing drug abuse or addiction, the problem is not the addiction. The problem is that what are they masking themselves in that they don't want to come out? That's why they're abusing drugs. So there is libertism, if you understand that ideology, which has shaped many people in our current dispensation of life, that many young people, many even old people, they will confess they are Christians, but they think they have liberty to do anything they want. Now, as a pastor, he has no control of what you're going to decide to do, Timothy, if you are not living out to the standard of what you believe. Number 2, there is high level of syncretism. Now, many people confess they are Christians, but they want to live culturally in the manner that they used to live. Others want to live in the way that seeks pleasure. I want the pleasure. I want the pleasure. This my life. I want the pleasure. So they tend. Let me just bring it this way, that to make it very short. I always ask people that if there was no retribution, would you still be a believer? If there was no sense of reward or punishment, would you still be a believer? Now, many people, sometimes because there is a manipulated, exploited, the reward they expect has taken long, then they tend to compromise their faith. And as a religious leader, you have sometimes you have limits to how we can control. I can end it philosophically with this, Timothy. I have ability to control what I can say to what you're going to say, but I can't control what you're thinking or what you're going to say to me. Now that's how the heart works, that you will share the gospel truth. How should you live responsibly in life? But I can't decide how you're going to apply these principles in the way you live.
Thank you very much. And I'll come back to that in a short while. Dr. Christine, when you look at the relationship between religious institutions and government, how far should the greeting go? To the elbow, just a handshake? How far should it go, especially in the interaction between religious institutions and government and vice versa?
Thank you, Timothy. I think the greeting should be should be candid, should be firm. The greeting should be a firm handshake.
Not the greeting of the elbow.
Let it be a firm handshake. Look each other in the eye and speak about the things that are affecting the people that they both serve. The church should not shy away from her prophetic voice. Where there is no justice, where there is pain, the church should take a firm stand and say, look, here there is a problem. How can we cooperate? How can we attend to the needs of, for example, families? If a community has issues with land, and I think if there is something that has bothered me for a while now, it is the issue of land. I don't know how many reports we get on a weekly basis that have to document issues of land disputes. Someone is beaten, someone is killed, and nowadays it is so scary because I'm hearing even a son, a daughter harming a mother or a father because of land. So imagine government and church came together to discuss a way forward and speak and handle the issue of, for example, land disputes, and come up with very practical measures. Because if you look, for example, in the most recent past, we have had a few issues where the church and the government spoke one language, and it sounded beautiful. So we need to allow the church greet government, ask questions, interrogate and say, why should this go on for a long time? What can we do together? Because you cannot continue just, saying a word that does not change. So the relationship between government and the church, or the religious leaders, the religious institutions, should be one that allows for candid conversations, candid interrogation of issues, and pay very clear attention to them. At the moment, we have more divorce cases than we ever had before. What is happening? And yet, at the same time, we see many weddings, very many, relationships are ending up in very good marriages, but some of the marriages don't last 3 years, don't last 4 years. Those issues have to come, so the church leaders have to come. Government has also to make itself very clear on how such things should be handled. The church has a strong voice when it comes to family life. So I think that the greeting, as you ask, should be very candid, should be practical. The relationship should be liberative, very liberative. Go down to the people's needs, go down to practical details and attend to the issues of the people.
And I'm grateful that you've said the handshake should be firm, candid, but also look each other in the eye and be as frank as it. There's also a loss of confidence, both in government and religious organizations, where a religious leader is also taking advantage of the population in his congregation.
Yeah.
Give towards a particular objective,
Yeah.
a car, the car does not show up. Give towards a church, it does not show up. With this loss of confidence, both in government and religious institutions, where should the people go?
I think people usually have an opportunity to engage because we are now, there's a lot of information. Within the church, there are also resources that people can harness. They are individuals with information. They are individuals that can go at the front to support maybe the voiceless, the vulnerable. We need to be more open to teachings, like the teachings of the church on, safeguard people from manipulation. But that takes time, that takes a process, because the same people who might have taught them about giving, and giving is supposed to be a good thing, because it is good to give. But then there is need for teaching people how that should be, the liberative way, and then secure them from, engage them in getting out of the confines of what has been taught, and take it as, you can tell when something is going off track.
Yes.
If you give towards a vehicle for a leader, and you can see it, you can see the leader come to visit, you can see the leader run to support those who are bereaved, those who are sick, you may want to say, that's a good thing we did. And I think very many congregations do a good thing to support their leaders. But it is not right if there is continued hopelessness within the church. People need to come to a moment where they have confidence in the leaders. And so within the church, there needs to be a degree of accountability. People should be able to say, our leader needs to account to us. So there are some practices, there are some good practices. For example, if you've collected money for 3 months, you might want to give an accountability of what has gone on with this money. Because we come from a giving culture. We cannot hold on to things by ourselves. The scriptures are very clear. Blessed is the one who gives. And those scriptures are okay. But we need that accountability. We need to see that the things we've asked for or we've been supporting are actually coming out for the good of the people or for the good of the ministry. So the loss of confidence comes when there is no transparency, when there's no integrity, when there is no accountability, and you cannot tell right from wrong. So it is very important that we reestablish faith, we reestablish hope in the lives of the people. Otherwise, it defeats the cause of Christ. It defeats the cause of belonging and what religion is supposed to be, what the religious traditions or institutions are meant to be. They're meant to do belongings, where people come in and stay and feel family and feel connected. So that interconnectedness will be broken if there is no faith, if there's no trust. So leaders need to remember all the time, and then they need to be put to account all the time. Okay. But it takes a process of growth, because the congregations need to come to a moment where, and I know for some reason, many of us have grown in cultures where we respect. Many people want to say fear, but many times we respect church leaders. We respect them for who they are, and they do deserve our honor and our respect. But if consistently something is not adding up, the church needs to grow. The people need to be taught to seek to understand what's going on and bring the responsible leaders to some form of accountability so that hope and faith and trust and integrity and working together is re-established, because then there will be peace within the congregation. Otherwise, something will go wrong. And so I understand you when you say there is lack of trust in both the church and in the government, lack of accountability, whether it's friendship, whether it's a couple or family. If there is no transparency, it will definitely degenerate into a very bad relationship. And that's when you hear something is wrong in this church, the pastor has been chased, or so and so has been, you know, there's tension within the congregation and there can be no growth. And I'm very sure those things don't just grieve the congregation, they also grieve the Spirit of God, because he expects he expects freedom. He expects people to thrive, like Reverend said earlier.
Thank you very much. Let me read some feedback that has come through, a lot of feedback here. Good evening, Timothy. I like the topic of discussion. I honestly think and request that religious activities or worship should be regulated and must, and much as we have the freedom of worship, many people are abusing this right and taking advantage of people. Churches have been turned into businesses and full-time well-paying jobs. This is Godfrey Chakala, okay? Good evening, Timothy. Are those clergy aware that most places of worship are now in full gear fundraising for all intending candidates, regardless of political orientation? In any way, this looks like blackmail. This is Benjamin from Kampala, okay? Thank you, Benjamin. Good evening, Timothy. Good evening, Timothy. Thank you for the headliners today. I am Betty from Karamoja, Moroto District. First, I want to say a big thank you to the moms, the teachers, the mentors, Dr. Christine and others and servants of God for shaping Uganda's destiny through faith, character, and morals and nationalism. So proud of Dr. Christine for the great support you rendered to me while completing my studies, and that showed character of humanity, and God bless you. Kudos to you, Dr. Christine there. This is another one comes in there and says, thank you, Timothy, for the show. I am Robert from Ginger. My inquiry goes to Reverend Dr. Gideon. What are the requirements of registering a ministry like under a Pentecostal church? Where does the annual return paid by the registered ministry go? Is it in religious church or government accounts, or is it taxed and charged from churches? Thank you very much, okay? Just two more so that we take a break. They're requesting, Reverend Biam Gisha, please repeat the 12 principles of development. I don't know if the word of development. Religion is a mandate. We should aim at enabling peace and making and maintaining relationship, and not charging or changing it. God has already blessed us as human beings and understanding there, okay? Excellent discussion and topic. Remember to, okay, thank you very much for that one. Lastly, thank you, Timothy. Religious leaders should pray for the country. Corruption is killing our country. This is Grace from Kakumiro. Thank you very much for your messages. Let's take a quick break. As the Bible says, there's a time for everything. It's a time for a break.
Street issues are my target. We are what? Unstoppable. We are what? Unstoppable. I'm in a plantation, but on a global mission. Internet ambition, full condition. We are what? Unstoppable. We are what? Unstoppable. Oro cash is gone. Netagayo karoni. Nigga mukafoni. Money in the zone. We are what? Unstoppable. We are what? Unstoppable. We are good.
With you and MTN together, our ambition is unstoppable.
We are what? Unstoppable!
The government's core mandate is to maintain law and order, safeguard citizens' rights, and provide essential public services.
Remember, one of the pillars of a roadmap is innovation, and entrepreneurship.
There has been this question of how are you protecting our indigenous seed?
It's going to be a tall project. That answers somebody's question.
For the past 20 weeks, the Front Bench has brought you insightful discussions on governance, security, healthcare, justice, and commerce.
When you go through this complicated procedure, involve the lawyers, you bring the case against him, the judge will hear you out and pass judgment, and you're out of court in record time.
We remain committed to keeping you informed and engaged on key national matters.
So these are huge, these are powerful organizations which now Uganda chairs. Why don't you come together?
If we haven't migrated to the e-card because of various reasons, including that not all the people of Uganda have smartphones.
You can sit in your house, apply for a passport.
If you have a Ugandan who has a successful logistics firm in the US, it means he can come to Uganda and do a lot more.
Now airing every Monday at 8:30 p.m. with me, Jethro Kasaiji, your interface with the government only on your public broadcaster, UBC, Inspiring Uganda.
UBC is the national public broadcaster. We educate, inform, entertain, and inspire our audiences. You can watch us on free-to-air channel 001, DSTV channel 282, GoTV channel 371, Star Times channel 201, Zuku TV channel 20, and Azam TV channel 350. Even when your subscription expires, you can still watch UBC for free on your pay TV platforms.
Welcome back from that quick commercial break here on Behind the Headlines. My name is Timothy Nyangweso. In the studio, I'm joined by Dr. Christine, I'm joined by Reverend Simon, Pastor Joshua, Reverend Dr. Byamgisha, and Reverend Canon Aaron Mwesije, and we're discussing everything religious institutions vis-a-vis the state or the government. We're looking at, especially as we project to 2026, where should we position ourselves as a country? We've spoken about everything: corruption, the heart issues, moral decadence, and we've talked about all the challenges that are there. Let me read two messages so that we can be able to get into our conversation. Wow. Good evening, Timothy. I'm from Gulu City. I like and agree with Dr. Christine. For me, I do not like church leaders who shout on media houses and news. They should call the president, the ministers, sit down and express their disappointment, how things are managed, and the recent case of by-elections in Kawempe. Okay, thank you very much for that. One that is quite lengthy. This is Stephen from Mbale. Thank you, Timothy, for the show. It's unfortunate that the religious institution in this country has been looked in a way to extend the leaders of such institutions to end up bowing down and asking what would have been provided in a more honorable way from government. In my view, the instructions should have been a formal setup, not like the outsider of government like a partner. Instead should be part of government that cannot be separated from the full system. The statement "for God and my country," for our case, does not have any strong meaning when faith should attain legitimacy or legality from a government that should really consider it to be part of an arm of existence. Okay. Quite lengthy and very philosophical, like Reverend Simon here. Okay, let me get to Reverend Mwesije. Reverend, if we look at the trajectory of 2021 elections and go by the report of government of 54 people dying in November, and looking at Kawempe, looking at the battering that has been ongoing every time there is a rise up of people for a concern, how do we diffuse the tensions before we get to 2026?
That's a good question and very fundamental. But as you rightly said, Timothy and my colleagues, I think this country has a motto, for God and my country. The national anthem is a sermon itself. Now, and I want to actually echo Joshua's words, because he dwelt more to do with the God being the center of everything. Where do we go in 2026 if what happened in the former elections, people lost lives and what have you, and we're going to experience the same or worse? But God uses faith to actually mold our characters. Now, when you talk of people's perceptions and how we are as a country, I don't blame leaders. I don't blame both church leaders and I don't blame political leaders. It is the system that where we are coming from. First of all, our educational system, that matters, because I want to tell you that the educational system that we have been enjoying over time, which I may call mass-produced education, as opposed to customized education, has done more harm than good. The family, as people said, is not utilized. First of all, we don't know what we need as a country. Why, first of all, this country is not a nation. I want to tell you, this country is a group of tribes forced to live together by circumstances of the age, and that has not been corrected over time because that has a colonial bearing. Up to now, you are having churches which are fragmented, and everyone wants with different theological backgrounds, different theologies. So someone would state that religion itself is a divisive force in as far as politics is concerned. You began by saying that when the colonists came here, we had UPC, DP based on religion. But even up to now, for your own information, instead of bringing people together, religion divides people more. Because when the churches have different theological backgrounds and they are teaching, they are divided along different theological overtones, their adherents speak the same language, behave the same way. So at the end of the day, you have people who are not having a common identity. You see why I'm saying that Uganda is not a nation. Uganda doesn't have a common identity. It doesn't have a common language. It doesn't have a common purpose. I want to tell you that, whether you like it or not. We can call ourselves that we are a country we called Uganda. But I think as far as the characteristics of what a nation, what makes a nation is, like Japan, for instance, which is not even a godly country, I may say. But Japan, 98% of its people speak Japanese. They have common interests. They have a common purpose. They have a common... Now, for us here, we don't have a common language. We use English as if it is everyone knows English, even those who haven't gone to school, by the way, they don't know it. They may be learned but not educated. So we have such a... So what I'm saying is that as you see the country the way it is, what can save it, I would say, would be the bedrock of people's character is integrity. Integrity in this country is in short supply, between me and you. And because there is no integrity in this country, both in church and in state, I want to tell you that, and I believe it, both in church and state, that does not mean that there are no people who have integrity in Uganda. No. I want you to get my point clear. There are people who have integrity, but they are not even utilized, and they are not even known. They are not even known at all in the both in the church. But the majority of the people lack integrity. So when it comes to elections, the churches are used to do fundraising, and of course they are, when the people win elections, then they give them a lot of money, they put them in front pews and what have you and what have you. So that kind of category can be cured by one thing. If we could maybe come back and we do what I may call a family, elders family summit as a country, and we bring all the stakeholders from different civil society, NGOs, Ugandans, and then we tell these people that the importance of a family, so that we begin at family level. Family, very important. You have Elders Summit, and you put it together, and we have elders, and you bring all the different stakeholders, put them together, and then you sensitize them on the importance of a family. Because as Frederick Douglass said, it is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. Uganda has been very much engaged in repairing broken men. And they have failed. Once you repair a broken man, he may break. So how do we build strong children? I think societies, whether they are godly or not, like if you go, I was in Denmark, in Copenhagen, you don't find a policeman on the street at all, whether it is at the night or during the day. Now, how do they manage their affairs? Because police is to keep law and order. When I ask someone, he says, for us, keeping law and order is in our hearts. So no, we don't need the police. So there's a lot of transparency, there's a lot of accountability, yet these people, when you go on the street of Copenhagen, there are no born-again people who sing songs of Zion, who clap hands at night, who sing Tumtenderizi. There are no born-again people, I want to tell you. But there is a lot of transparency. Now, why? What is the magic behind that? So which means, if you sit as a country and sensitize media, including the Timothy and Company Limited, because you need to sensitize. Why? Media influences a lot of the people. You influence attitudes, you influence thoughts. So if media is sensitized, and it knows what it should sensitize people so that they empower people towards the common good, or to have positive attitude to life. And then you have a summit that you sensitize the elders so that they are able to know the importance of a family. And then you create what I may call a multi-sector task force. I'm just giving solutions, of how we can solve this problem. Otherwise, it is going to be a repeat of what happened in 2021. Don't think that is something new that is going to happen. We need to sensitize, and I think the national ethical values that you read, sir, how many people in this country know that we have a national or a value system? We developed this in 2013, the president assented to it. As the Directorate for Ethics and Integrity, we've been doing it actually, we have covered many schools, but you cannot cover the whole country. It's not very easy. Sometimes we have insufficient budget to make sure that everyone has this. But also, when you disseminate these values, as you read them, integrity, honesty, because to me, integrity and honesty are non-tangible assets. The president is very busy looking at ways and means of how we can build the social and economic infrastructure, which is tangible assets. The non-tangible assets are honesty, integrity, self-control, trustworthiness. So how do we build integrity? Because that's a non-tangible asset. In other words, how do we build the moral infrastructure of this country as opposed to the political, economic, and social infrastructure? Government is spending more money in building the social and economic infrastructure, but less money on building the moral infrastructure of this country. And by moral infrastructure, I mean building on the non-tangible assets. So I think it's when the country redirects it sits down and we say, let's make a paradigm. There must be a paradigm shift in our planning. You have the National Planning Authority. How do we put more money in rebuilding them? And who are the architects? The church. Because the church is the custodian of values and morals, custodian of faith and human values. Okay. Therefore, you bring the church on board, you bring the elders on board, and you say, where do we start? Family, at family level. At the end of the day, you will fulfill what Frederick Douglass said. You come up with children in future who will be able to shun corruption at university. When they become parliamentarians and ministers, they will say corruption is. But otherwise, you remaining preaching the gospel, yes, and people getting saved and clapping hands. I think it will take time for this country even to talk of what I may call nationalism, love of your country, because you can't even talk of nationalism when you're not a nation. I beg to move.
Thank you. Let me come to Reverend Dr. Byamgisha. Reverend, how did we get here, and how do we get ourselves out of this place? One of the things that Reverend Mwesije has spoken about is nation building, where we are, but also keep in hindsight that if these states were brought together and were not a nation, how did we find ourselves here, and how do we get ourselves out of this? And is that a place for religious institutions?
Yeah, it is, like I said, there is something missing in our philosophizing about Uganda. So that religious leaders know their role, the governments know their role. Why do we exist? For example, like for us in the AIDS movement, we are even beginning to ask, is the state still viable? If you spend 80% of the money to run yourself before thinking about those you are supposed to govern, are you still useful? And I'm not talking about Uganda, I'm talking about state as, remember how power was first with the religious leaders, and then it shifted, it went to kings, and then it shifted and went to states. Since 1648 we have been moving on this issue of state with a known border, no interference. But we have issues, for example, that are cross-border, that don't respect any border. You can't say I've defeated poverty in Uganda when actually Kenya and DRC is still poor. You can't say I've defeated the AIDS in Uganda when you have not defeated it elsewhere. So the issue of state has to be questioned. But even the role of religion, what are you serving? What do you exist to do? So there is the whole debate of saying, I think Aaron has hinted on it, that we need this national conference to review. Where are we coming from? Where are we? Like when he says we don't have a common language. Fine. So what should be done? But before even a common language, there should be a common purpose.
Common purpose, common
A
identity.
common goal. Like the religious leaders in Uganda, under the Inter-Religious Council of Uganda, said their vision for this country is to see a divinely peaceful, united, prosperous Uganda with all people accessing full health and freedoms for the common good. Now, that's a very good vision. But how are we going to achieve it if we don't know how the local congregation is contributing to it and how the state is contributing to it?
They're securing the future.
Yeah, they say the securing of the future. Then the issue of language. I will always come back to language because that's another area we've not examined colonialism in the mind and heart. For example, in religion, we talk about sinners. Sinners. But have you ever heard a sermon on the sinned against? Have you heard about it? That this boy who has been neglected by the heads of the family or the government is not putting enough. I heard, for example, someone saying that the capitation grant for primary schools is,
17,000.
Yeah, and then he drops out of school, and then he gets in Jaga, and then you blame him. But he has been sinned against. He dropped out of school, or he's studying things that are not beneficial. Now we have to critique who is sinning against who.
Exactly.
The woman who is violated, exploited, and then he is blamed. Oh, she's seeking a divorce, and the church is on them. No divorce. No, how do you explain? So I think there is language issue of not knowing how to describe ourselves. Like love, the issue of love. Everyone talks about love, but we've not critiqued how do you identify love? How does love look like in legislation? How does love look like in the judiciary system? How does love look like in empowering young people? How does love look like in making sure that every person who is sick gets services?
Who describes that love?
That's us. That's what I'm saying, that we have not critiqued what we exist for.
What is the package?
You get the point? The purpose. If you say, oh, a healthier Uganda, how are you going to do it? What is going to be the contribution of government? What's going to be the contribution of culture? What's the contribution of the religious leaders? What's going to be the contribution of the media? We don't have that. So everyone beats about the bush. You see, like us who are working on AIDS. For 30 years, people are telling you, abstain from sex, be faithful, use condoms if you can't do ABC. The district, the LC5 comes and says the same message. The president comes and says the same message. But behind that, aren't we missing questions? Aren't we looking at, because for you to abstain successfully, government must have invested in you the right information at the right time, the right belief system, the right skills of how to say no consistently without giving reasons. So the information is there, the skills are there, the services for even being counseled are there, and then you say, once you have all of that, then you can successfully abstain. But if a government is not giving me accountability, how much money are you putting on information? How much money are you putting on services? How much money are you putting on policies, like to defeat stigma? How much money are you putting on ARVs treatment? So that's why I need this whole accountability to say, let's first of all define what is Uganda about. When we say Vision 2040,
what does it mean?
What does it mean? And if that is what it means, what should be the contribution of religious leaders? So instead of calling religious leaders to come and then you say lead the opening prayer and then you forget about them, can you bring them at what you were saying? Bring them at cabinet level and discuss. Yeah, we have this issue. How do we?
They pray and you launch the vision.
So the opening prayer,
and then you launch the vision.
So the colonial element of power over that government, when you want to bring questions, government says you are coming to politics.
And I want to come to that part before I come to Pastor Joshua. Very profound that you talk about the opening prayer, because with every government function there's an opening prayer by all sects. But social services.
Yes.
In the Maputo Declaration, this one Reverend Mosije can even attest to it, we signed for 15%.
That's true.
When you look at our health
15%, I was in the meeting myself in Abuja.
So
201.
If
now we are still
if we're less than 5%, and that social service is not there, it's creating tension within the population. If education, which is supposed to be an equalizer, is not for everyone. I was recently looking at a clip of a school that when it's raining, there's no school. It's under trees. The children have no books.
Yeah.
They're writing on the ground. If these social services that are meant to be equalizers are fading,
yes,
where is the place for religious leaders?
Good point.
Like Dr. Christine spoke, to have that firm handshake.
And that's why I talked about language. The first question to ask ourselves is government refusing to provide adequate services? Or is it failing? If we discover that it is failing, then we ask, So how can we be of help? What is lucky? If it is refusing, then we critique and say, why are you refusing? You have the capabilities. But there are questions we are not, because in the religious colonial mentality, there were questions that the religion was not given.
Okay.
For example, that's why the word salvation was cut into the last bit. The salvation is supposed to start with survival first, thriving, and then eternal life. And then it was cut off, and you talk about eternal life. How do I get eternal? And His Excellency actually talks a lot about it. He says, why should the Japanese live beyond 80 years, and for us we are dying at 40? Why does God love Africans? You know, so there are fundamental questions that we as religious leaders. Why does Abraham die at the age of 175? We have to ask, and it's not a point of pointing fingers now. It's a point of saying 63 years of independence, or 65, or whatever we have, but we should reevaluate and say, are we moving at par? For example, there are things I'm seeing that Uganda must do, that we signed that there should be no poverty by 2030, the SDG goals. No poverty, no hunger. How is religion and culture working with the government to contribute to that? Correct. What language do we have? What policies are in place? What plans, programs, partnerships, messages, the resource allocation, the self-audits?
Thank you.
Now, Uganda is part of the East Africa community. We are supposed to have had a full integration by 2050. The same thing with Africa, 2063. Where is the religion? Because there are things Uganda cannot achieve alone, that the government alone cannot achieve. So the religious leaders can't go there and say, you government. Instead, we should be evaluating and say, is the government failing? If it is failing, how could we help? Like now, when Trump said that he's closed the funding, we are saying, hey, but religious leaders have all the health facilities needed if government could support input in making sure that the health facilities absorb the patients that are nowhere to be seen.
Thank you very much, Reverend. Let me come to Pastor Josh. Pastor Josh, I know you follow especially the current affairs. A certain political party has said it's going on a protest vote. A certain political party, the National Resistance Movement, has put out its roadmap. There is a charged population that has needs that feels like it's not being met. There is this dissatisfaction on a 40-year rule. If you look at 2021 and look at how we've been progressing, it looks like the violence is improving or growing. How does church, how does a religious institution support to diffuse a country that could set itself ablaze to become a Libya, a Sudan, or even worse, to become a failed state? How do we stop that from happening?
That's a great question. When you're reading through, I think, the 10 values or something, you sounded to be mentioning one of those political parties that want to do a protest vote. So I was thinking, okay, I haven't seen that indeed. But I'm fully convinced that the religious group needs to get back to emphasizing that man is valuable, created in the image of God. That also means that man has the capacity to be creative. He has a responsibility to steward the resources God has given him. All right? Some have much, some have less, but each one of us is responsible for the little or the much that we have. And That should be from the heart. As a parent, one of the things that really challenges me is when Joseph was sold into slavery, he rose up to become a prime minister. I ask myself, if my children were sold, thank God they're now adults, but if they were sold at the age of Joseph to Rwanda, would they have risen up to become prime ministers there? I don't think so, because I think there's a gap in my parenting. I've done well, but I think there's a gap there. That aside, because we are talking about we need to re-emphasize family, which we need to. Where the church, I think, is missing is we have those who claim to be religious leaders, and they go on the philosophy, our traditional parents used to have 4 wives and this, and they prospered. And they begin to teach that if we are to prosper, have 4 wives, if you have energy, and the rest. And I think, what does that guy have between his ears is completely inconsistent with what is right and true. Okay? So, without even just saying it's religion or which religion, truth is truth and it's universal. And that must be emphasized in what we teach. Not just saying how you prosper, no, we must stick to the truth. I'm personally convinced that one of the reasons that Western Uganda is prospering up today, although I think its future is limited, is because of the East African revival, where men turned away from drinking, turned away from beating their wives, and focused on what will build my children. Educated them, they learned to say sorry, they learned to work hard, which things you're talking about. And they were coming from the heart, not the colonial master. That brought the blessing to Western Uganda. I believe.
And Central, by the way.
Yeah, a bit of Central. So if they walked away from that, destruction is going to come, because it's a natural cycle. So for Uganda to go forward, we need to get back to that revival where conviction starts from the heart. And I say, I know who I am, created in the image of God. I have capacity to think, I have capacity to bring a solution to my need. All right? So I have this responsibility. The 2 people prayer that I would want to think about, there's a young lady who sits an important office, and she's disturbed by the acts of corruption. Money is released to buy a piece of land, and people intentionally go to buy a swamp to ask for more money, and yet they know they'll actually get, so that they can divert the money. And she says, you know what, this is not right. I will not put my hand to that discovery. They don't like her, but because she stood, things are beginning to change. Where is Uganda's hope? Where every Ugandan stands and says, this is not right. Not by fighting or by being violent, by saying this is not right, I'll not put my hand to it. I know there's a call, we need to protect the votes and everywhere. Yes, the key is, as you go to vote, you as electoral officer or whoever, take your stand. You as the chairman of electoral commission, take your stand and declare this is it. Yes, there may be many other things that will come. People will call you, we know your son, we know your wife, we know your everything, but you know that when I stand on truth, that is the way we are going to go. So that's the kind of people we need to be as individuals, and collectively as a nation we start getting that. I want to say this also, because you said, what are the needs of the people? As a church, Watoto Church, we began to discover, yes, it's great to preach and the truth is important, but we need to be practical. So one of the practical needs is say we will rescue vulnerable children. And so we began to do the work to make sure they are housed, they are schooled, and they are enabled to think as leaders. So we say we are raising the next generation of Ugandan leaders. And we've been committed to that for over 30 years. Then say, yes, the mothers, let's empower them. They said, what are their needs? Dignified work, education for their children, medical health. There's a fourth point, which are common needs. And say, yes, we will work with you and empower you so that you can earn fees to pay for your child, build your own home, and we do this as a community. They are amazing ladies who started with nothing, became teachers to their own children, and they're doing amazing work.
Pastor Josh,
Yeah.
Reverend Mwesje and Reverend Dr. Byamgisha said something that really caught me.
Yep.
Nation building.
Yep.
States were put together, these boundaries were put somewhere, someone sat in Berlin and decided how we look as a country. And you and I have been part of something that said culture will eat strategy for breakfast and lunch any day.
Yeah.
And both of them have mentioned that as a country, both in identity, in purpose, in language.
Yeah, by the way, I don't necessarily believe what they say. I think it's a narrative that has eaten Uganda for lunch, since culture is for breakfast. That aspect, colonialists and the rest, is a narrative that puts Uganda down, all right? It's a narrative where we say education has been terrible. We grew up on that education. It took us somewhere. And then we say we need to change this and the rest. No. Behind that, there are people that want to keep us on a narrative that keeps us absolutely behind. So they say we have no language. One, the English language unites us. It's because it's an English people's language. Let's forget that. Who created Uganda? It's not the colonialists. The Bible is clear on that. God put the nations together. They were formed under his direction. And our diversity is our uniqueness that we must thrive in. And so that language keeps us. But more so, even as we speak about churches, the language is not necessarily the words you speak, but the life you live. To me, one of the songs I love, I think it's entitled Love in Any Language, which is also part of his language. You can tell me you love me in Runyankore, yet there is no heart of love. I will feel it whether I understand Runyankore or not. So again, how do we get back to those values that I know you are human? I may not necessarily understand your language at the moment, but we are walking this. We are saving the life of that baby. I'm not building this perimeter wall of mine into the middle of the road. I need to call 5 neighbors before I start driving out. Do you still need city council on that?
Thank you very much, Pastor Josh, with what you've said. Reverend Simon, when you look at how political parties are tearing people apart, the agitation within the population, removing a dictator, such sloganeering that happens within the country, it's tearing people apart. On tribal lines, these people are from here, these people are from here. And I can share a testimony where my car was scratched and I got out and this man said, Bana Banyankod, but I'm a Samia. So that connotation, the church has also made it worse that on a pulpit, a religious leader is being partisan. How do we pull this country together with all these scars, with all this pain that has been caused by both the church and the government?
Wow, that's a very deep question. I want to highlight something that I took note of when they were sharing. There is a funny thought I always have that if you took away human beings, what would be the value of elections? So centrally, we need that aspect of respecting human life. Now, the goal for us reflecting on this is to bring a position where people in Uganda, our viewers both here and internationally, should have an ideology which views that when you talk about human life is not ethnic. Human life is not, it doesn't have boundaries or the dichotomy of faith or religion. Human life is human life. That's why if someone right now heard our nose and our mouth and we can't breathe, you cannot in your first need say, I need this party. You will say, I need to breathe. Because that's what it really means, human life. So I want to call upon us as Ugandans to adopt a language that respects human life and take away the diversions that come with, I think for me, I always say that if anyone wants to use a culture bias to win favor in the populace, then they lack strength. They lack strength in the aspect of, say, they don't have value to sell. Because if you have value to sell, you cannot spend time blackmailing someone. Sell the value and let people buy the value. So in our construction of the notions of who belongs where, we have destroyed the very essence of being human. The very essence of being human. So if we can bring back that, which my brother talked about, being created in the image of God, the very essence of being human is, now let me spoil you a little with the philosophy. We call it the ontology of you as a human being. In your nature, in your existence as a human being, you do not exist because of what surrounds you. You exist because of a life you live. So if someone propagates a politics that makes you kill a neighbor or hate the other because of ethnicity, then that's myopic. It's not something irrespectful. Because if you're going to tell me something and you're not telling me a value you're bringing, a strategy you're bringing, an activity that's going to bring transformation, but rather you are capitalizing on that. And that comes back now to something deep now. In nature, all living species seek to survive. Now they employ any mechanism, whether to hurt the enemy who is attacking them or to build a wall to protect them. So in human nature, walls of self-presumption becomes walls of self-imprisonment. So the narrative my elder is talking about is what people have put as a wall, not to allow the exact image to come out and speak to people what's the right thing. And that is because in human nature we are selfish. Pastor Joshua knows this much deep, that we live in the earth which is imperfect. That's why people live with hope to live in a new heaven and new earth. They don't want to be here, but they don't want again to live here. They want to they want to go to heaven, but are still here. So while you are here, make this your heaven. Create an atmosphere that is very inclusive. Create policies that allow everyone's voice to be heard.
Yes.
And actually the root word for church in Hebrew comes from the word kohel. Now kohel is a word which comes from the word call, which is voice. So it means that if a church is going to be an assembly of believers who hears the voice of God and whose voice or cry to God is heard, then a church should be a church that voices the uniform voice for the need of humanity and respect of life.
Thank you very much. Lastly, Dr. Christine, how do we set a table to have a conversation, an honest conversation about the Uganda we want? And who calls for that conversation?
Okay. Thank you, Timothy. I think that's a powerful question. I think we are all going to take responsibility, but there can be key stakeholders. And we are not going to rush to that table because we have to be honest with ourselves. Everybody is going to need a moment of reflection. Where has a mother gone wrong? Where has a father gone wrong? How are we portraying ourselves at family level to our children? Are we showing them? Are we playing life for them to emulate? How many families still sit together at home and have a meal and pray together? So there are going to be questions that parents need to ask and answer. Children have to sit down and also reflect. Are we teachable? Are we obedient? Are we listening? Are we giving our best? Are we learning from what tradition has handed down to us? Are we listening to our teachers? Children have to also sit down and reflect. The teacher in the classroom is also going to sit and reflect. When you are in class, what do you see? Do you observe your learners? Where is the place of empathy towards these learners? How do you set up an atmosphere in your class, in my lecture room? Yeah, Simon, how do you set up in the lecture room? The religious leaders are going to be very important during that conversation. Already Reverend has mentioned that, the family summit, all that. So we need to see where are we letting down the others that are looking up to us. We have to answer. We have to be honest with ourselves. Where are we letting down the youth? How have we let them down? When we have answered ourselves and reflected, we will come to a moment where we will know what that conversation will be about. Are we allowing the children to learn to work? Are we setting the rules? Are we consistent? While at work, do we encourage, are we participants with a team building spirit? Not for purposes of passing interviews, but when they say, is Christine a team builder? Can I stand and say, I am a team builder? Am I honest? Where we need to talk about this, we need to, at that conversation table, we're going to have a very strict agenda. Can we as people face ourselves and say that it's not now tribes, but it's a Uganda, a beautiful Uganda that we want, because we are blessed. And everybody in Uganda will know that God did his part. A beautiful cultural heritage. Just look at our diversity. Pastor has said our diversity is our wealth. Just look at the languages. I speak about 8 of our own languages. Sometimes I'm just too happy to switch from Rutoro to Dupadola, for example, or to switch from Dupadola to Lugwere. We have so much beauty in our languages. How much do we harness? Why don't, if we are in intercultural marriages, how much are we able to even discuss a matter in those languages? What are we missing by not paying attention to our languages? So there is a lot that we have to do and it's going to be in phases. By the time we arrive at that table, Timothy, We should have done very good homework, because things can still go wrong at that table. We need to be honest. And this is going to be in steps. So I see a conversation that should happen between parents, mothers and fathers as parents in a school setting. Some fathers don't go for visiting days. They do not even have a conversation with their children. Some children will tell me, doctor, when I see my father, I run, I hide away. Why are children running? Because when are you going to mentor them? How can we even claim to mentor them? I have, I think, 40 signed up mentees. We have even a WhatsApp group. But they are all yearning for a conversation. And sometimes you can't afford to listen to them. I have done, recently a virtual meeting, and they're like, when are we meeting again? Just this last week, I had to put a schedule of a student who could not consistently come to class. So I got concerned and said, why are you not coming to class consistently? And she said, I have a problem with the phone. I am addicted to the phone. So I said, can we agree on a way forward? And she said, madam, what do I do? And so she's like, I will be delivering the phone every morning and picking it at 5. I am talking about a student at university.
Wow.
So we need to go down and have a conversation. So there are going to be several, I think, cohorts of conversations. And then we will come to a national meeting where we can now say, look, some of these can be our guidelines. Because we have so much, we have the national identity to talk about. The tribes have taken our attention, but God intended that the nation is beautiful with all these tribes different, the languages. Look at our music, look at our dances, look at our food, look at our idioms, look at the power in how we articulate in our languages. So I think that there is so much wealth, and we need to be honest. So I want to see the following stakeholders at the table: teachers, parents, parliamentarians. I want the religious leaders, and let's have that conversation that speaks into what can guide our nation into to take us to the beauty that we would like to see. Because we cannot go on like this. So we need to repent of every tribalism. We need to go beyond our tribes. We need to come and love ourselves as Ugandans, and then see and harness every single bit that is beautiful about our country. If you want to know that our country is beautiful, when you don't enjoy your environment, another person can come from Japan and just transforms the same area where you have been, and you start admiring it. Okay. Which is why I agree with one preacher who said, if Ugandans are sent to the UK or even South Korea, we will go. And then we will, if something happens there, we will come back and we will not have changed anything. So other people can come and beautify our land, but our land is already beautiful. So if we believe in ourselves and come to that table, we will see conversation, that we will have that conversation. And the stakeholders include a bit of everyone, because there is need for every voice to be heard. So I see a very important conversation with the young people, because Uganda is a young nation. We all have that kind of information. So I see a need for the young people to be given attention, to be listened to. On the agenda, we must address mental health, issues of mental health. So the drug report that you've been hearing and what you read about is a reality. But why the drugs? So we need to go under there. Children and families need to protect themselves from so many things. They need to relate. We need to connect. Internet came, instead of making us connect better, communicate, relate, we are actually apart. So but there are resources for us where to connect and relate. So the table and that conversation must happen, and the stakeholders are many. I see educators, I see religious leaders, I see mothers and fathers, and I see the young people. We need a fireplace. In Rutoro we say, Hamurum Kairiz. We need that evening fireplace where the young people ask. And in fact, at the university nowadays there is Kyoto, which I think is a reproduction of exactly what our cultures have had. Some of the beautiful things in our own cultures can be reproduced, and we can have a very meaningful conversation and turn and see. And I want to project and see Uganda as a nation that God has loved and beautified from the very beginning, and we need to love our country. When we do that, we will be happy.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very passionate submission there. Let me read a few messages so that I can give each of you 1 minute of parting shots. Governmental religious institutions, the ordinary Ugandan is left helpless. The people to whom the public looks to in time of need are either or not there, the same as the ones that are working against them. The extent of this would create helpers, even take part in the mayhem that inflicts on the vulnerable people. Okay, this is very lengthy. This is from someone who talks about NEMA, talks about land grabbing, and talks about preferential treatment, a lot of what they're saying there. This is Godias from Mitoma. He says, the key of nation development is the character of its people in the words they say. Okay. Someone else says, thank you, Timothy, for the program. I'm watching here from Mbarara City. My question is about the LC1s and LC2s allowances to be increased by government effective 2021. For us, the LC's fraternity, we appreciate the decision to increase that. After years of empty pockets and broken promises, LC leaders finally have got 7.3 billion. Okay, I don't think that is nation building there. But Yasin says from you, Mbe, a great discussion on the idea of building morals on the infrastructure of the country. We engage in zero tolerance to corruption and impunity. I beg for submission there. Okay, thank you. Lastly, thank you, Timothy, for the show. How can the government intervene in stopping false prophets from grabbing church land? And for example, my district in Chotera, there is a lady calling herself an apostle who we trust and work together with. We collided on money for buying church land, and it was bought, but unfortunately, recent weeks, she has wanted to sell the land for her own benefit, and she has gone back to Kampala. Wow. Wow. Very many messages, but our time is fast spent. So, Reverends and Doctor, I will give each of you a minute to give your parting shot. I will start with Dr. Christine, Reverend Simon, Pastor Josh, Reverend Biamgisha, and finally, Reverend Canon Mwesije. Your 1 minute of a parting shot.
Thank you, Timothy. I think I long to see that we work together and rebuild the broken parts of the community, rebuilding faith, rebuilding trust, and we need to allow God to come at the center of all these things that we are, grappling with as a nation, and to believe that we have a great future if we learn from one another, if we discuss, and if we live, if we develop our character. And we need to pay attention to the young people and give them confidence to take the country forward, because they are a very important component of society.
Thank you very much. Reverend Simon.
Thank you. And Timothy and the viewers and the listeners, until we allow religiosity to become an integrated part of our life in the way we live, we will continue to grapple with the questions of poor governance, relationship, leaders, religious leaders, government, what. But as an individual who has a responsibility to construct a life that is meaningful, besides the rewards that are attached to faith, can we promote virtues and values that will enhance our social cohesion, coexistence, and promote productivity in the way we live?
Thank you very much. Pastor Josh.
Wow. Thanks for this opportunity. I'm thinking about two things. Be the person you are waiting for.
Be the person you're waiting for.
Yes. Which means take personal responsibility and do what needs to be done without necessarily waiting for somebody else. Picking from her story, I first heard about it that if you took Ugandans to Germany and took Germans and brought them to Uganda, in 50 years, Germany will be like current Uganda, and Uganda will be like current Germany, because the people, their ethic is different. So let's get back to walking in the truth, living by the truth, and propagating that.
Thank you very much. Reverend Dr.
I am a product of love. Love from government, love from faith community, love from family, love from friends. If we can really look at that element of God's love and see how we can increase it in governance, in community leadership, in spiritual mentorship, in service delivery, Uganda can be cured.
Okay. Thank you very much. Lastly, Reverend Mwesije.
Our permanent secretary, the current one, is called Mr. Dansan Balaba of the Directorate for Ethics and Integrity, recently cautioned us, and he said, stop, and there is unreconciled differences, there is a lot of mistrust, there is witch hunting. If you could stop witch hunting, mistrust, and reconcile differences. The country called Uganda is characterized by the three, between me and you, and that is why we have not reached where we are. So my basis is what we do at the Directorate for Ethics and Integrity, and that's what I end with. The mandate is rebuilding ethics and integrity and coordinating national efforts in the fight against corruption. Integrity is the bedrock of character. I want to emphasize the following, that religious leaders and religious institutions in the government should establish integrity ambassador clubs in schools and universities. We have done it, and we have started it as Directorate for Ethics and Integrity. We should actually disseminate and also streamline the national ethical values, with very important in schools and in churches, starting with the family and youth, so that they know that we have a value system in this country, because it was developed by the Directorate. We should enhance the district integrity promotion forums. What I'm trying to tell you is that as the Directorate, we have done something that many stakeholders have not put into consideration, establishing the integrity focal persons in every MDA, establishing the district integrity promotion forums at every district, the national ethical value policy, which you read at the beginning of this show, and also the integrity ambassadors clubs in schools. Now, not all schools have had this share. So my take is that every listener who is here, because some of these schools, by the way, they are church founded. Most of them are church founded. But the foundation bodies have actually abdicated their responsibilities. They have left the work to the government.
Okay.
In terms of values, in terms of integrity. So if we could revisit our mandate, and then we establish district in, we put in place integrity focal persons in schools and integrity ambassadors clubs. The Directorate for Ethics and Integrity is here to forward that and promote it in the entire country. At the end of the day, rebuilding ethics and integrity will actually be a bedrock to promote character and to be able to defeat and reconcile differences, mistrust, and witch hunting in this country.
Thank you very much. Reverends, Pastor Josh, Dr. Christine, thank you very much for coming. Thank you for agreeing to come here for our invite. The technical team that has made today possible, both in the production, in the back room, in the control room, and also on the floor here for making today possible. We'll end it with this quote: you are what you do, not what you say you will do. Good morning.
UBC, inspiring Uganda.
The government's core mandate is to maintain law and order, safeguard citizens' rights,